say, and we've got a very short time to perform, so we want to keep things moving. To that end, we've handed out copies of the rules, and I just want to summarize the general format. Each candidate is going to have the opportunity to give a 2-minute opening statement and a 2-minute closing statement. Just before we got started, the candidates drew numbers, and they are seated in the order in which they will give their opening and closing statements. After the opening statements, I'm going to ask a series of 6 questions, gathered from ones that you've submitted. Each of the candidates will give a 1-minute response, and we're going to rotate the candidate who answers each question first. We'll then conclude with the 2-minute closing statements. The candidates, Bob Platt's our timekeeper, and the candidates are going to be given a 15-second warning before the end of their allotted time for each statement or question response. And I've warned the candidates, and I'm telling all the enthusiastic supporters here, that I'm going to be ruthless in cutting people off, and we're never going to get that. I also cannot state strongly enough that we are going to need you to refrain from applause or cheering until the end of the entire forum. This is going to be very challenging. People are excited about these races. They're excited about these great candidates. But it's critical that you hold off on your cheering and applause until the end of the entire forum. If you talk or cheer or applaud during your candidate you're supporting's remarks, you're just taking time away from that candidate. And if you cheer or applaud as we're trying to move from candidate to candidate, again, we're never going to get done. We've got a long program. We've got great candidates. We really need everybody's cooperation to get through this. So please hold your applause until the end. I will note that we have only 5 candidates, not 6. On January 2nd, Elmer Lowe informed Mike Lieberman that for personal reasons he is withdrawing as a candidate, but he intends to be an active supporter of the candidates in the upcoming caucus. Now with that, I am going to introduce our candidates, and I will start with Peter Fallon, Melissa Bondi, Tyrone Sims, Kim Klingler, and Libby Gardner. And the candidates in their opening and closing remarks are free to remain seated or stand where they are or come up to the podium. For purposes of the questions, we'd ask that you remain in your seats and answer the questions. Please be cooperative in passing the mic down. I'm sure you will all be late nights. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Fallon.
Can everyone hear me? Thank you, Tom. I'm Peter Fallon, and I am seeking our party's endorsement for the county board vacancy. I am running because I am the best candidate to continue Arlington's long-standing tradition of good government based on electing qualified candidates with years of broad-based community experience, a strong record of commitment to local public service, and embracing Arlington's core community values. I am the candidate with the extensive record of experience across multiple areas necessary to balance competing priorities, find solutions, and govern in the best interests of the people of Arlington. My family and I have made Arlington our home for more than 25 years. Early on, I followed the example of so many others and became deeply involved in the ongoing effort to make Arlington a better place for us all. Arlington has much to be proud of, but we have to be ready both for the challenges and the opportunities ahead. To be successful, Arlington needs leadership with the knowledge and the experience, coupled with the willingness to accept the consequences associated with their decisions. I have served in the Arlington County Planning Commission since 2004, and as the chair of it in 2009. I chaired a zoning committee for 3 years, and I have served as the commission's liaison to our Affordable Housing Commission for the past 2 years. I served on the Transportation Commission for 3 years. I have served on more than a dozen task forces and special committees during this period. I have the essential first-hand experience across many areas of government to do this job. I have used my voice at the table to make a direct impact on the development of county policy for many years. I have long-standing ties to Arlington. My experience will be evident in tonight's forum. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions this evening.
Fellow Arlington Democrats, I'm excited to be here tonight to listen to your questions and to share my vision for Arlington. As your county board member, I would bring my broad understanding of progressive policies and more than 10 years' experience working in diverse communities to achieve our important goals. That starts with Arlington's children, giving them the resources they need to excel. Our outstanding public schools are fundamental to our success as a community, and that's how I'll value them as a county board member. We must also support our other core services, such as public safety, infrastructure, and maintenance. Since 2004, I've led efforts in Arlington and across Virginia to expand housing choices that residents can afford. I work directly with tenants to preserve their communities. I advocated for progressive housing benefits and development projects, and I co-authored Arlington's Affordable Housing Ordinance, the strongest law in the state. I've worked to prevent homelessness and for human services programs that have helped thousands of Arlington residents. With fellow environmental leaders, I helped to create Arlington's Fresh Air Initiative. Together, we've increased green building incentives and energy conservation and improved stormwater protection and management. In dozens of plans across Arlington and the region, I've pursued best practices in smart growth development, protecting neighborhoods, and improving our sustainability. In 2008, I gave up my car, so I know the value of reliable walking, biking, and transit choices. We know that our excellent transportation network is critical to Arlington's economy. We must also compete for new 21st century jobs in science, technology, and healthcare. And we must further support our small businesses and pursue tourism and the arts. For more than 10 years, I've brought my own ideas and energy to push Arlington forward. I've urged the board to adopt solutions that uphold our progressive values and put people first. Together with your help, we can begin a new generation of ideas and excellence here at home. I'm really looking forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, ACDC, for providing this forum for me and my fellow candidates to speak with you all this evening. As many of you know, after growing up in Northern Virginia, I went on to graduate from West Point and then served in the U.S. Army. During my 15 months in Iraq, I developed and mentored a local district government in Baghdad. I greatly appreciated being amongst the people, walking the streets, talking with people, visiting the schools, going to local businesses, even drinking tea with the local elders. I loved this form of service, assisting private citizens in realizing their visions and dreams for their communities and their children. Now, I would like to continue that same form of service here in Arlington. With my experience of bringing communities and people together, along with my systems engineering background, I intend to foster an environment of community activism and collaboration. As an Arlington County Board member, my focus will be maximizing the effectiveness of our tax dollars, improving the collaboration between Arlington County government and Arlington Public Schools, and promoting thoughtful growth so that all Arlington residents can continue to live, work, shop, and raise their families here in this great and wonderful county. As I move forward with my vision of Arlington, I will always seek to maximize citizen involvement in producing effective solutions. I will always keep in mind the motto of Arlington's Independence Center: do nothing for me without me. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to discussing with you my candidacy and my vision for our county. Thank you.
Good evening. I am Kim Klingler, and I am both proud and privileged to serve on multiple community organizations' boards and advisory commissions. But truly, I believe that in order to understand the needs of our community, we must meet people where they are. Through my work as a volunteer first responder, through Snowmageddon, through hurricanes, through day-to-day emergencies, through my volunteerism as a volunteer at the Arlington Free Clinic, I have seen people in Arlington with unmet needs. Through my conversations on hundreds of doors, I have heard your thoughts and your concerns. And let me tell you what I've been hearing. Our community is asking for a comprehensive plan to address our dwindling affordable housing and our increasing density. Our community is asking for short-term as well as long-term solutions to address our school capacity issues. We are also asking for the ability to maintain a diverse and caring community, which means so much to us here in Arlington. I have also heard that our residents want their new board member to be connected to our community, to prioritize and to spend wisely, and to also be an independent voice. My work as a community volunteer, as well as my leadership in the business community, and my overall approach make me uniquely qualified to be this new board member. I thank you so much for your time tonight, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Happy New Year, everybody. It's Arlington, it's got to be an election, right? We're all good Democrats here tonight and great candidates. The question is, who is best able to manage change so that as we move forward, Arlington grows, it stays the community we love. This is a pivotal time for Arlington. We need leaders who know how to manage change, move us forward, but keep what we value most. We face some big challenges: affordable housing, transportation, growth, maintaining core services, and all in a time of tight budgets. For the past 15 years, I've been managing change on the school board, and our schools have seen a lot of change. In 1996, there were inequities in our school system. Our capital program was a mess, and I ran for school board to make things better. Since then, we've renovated and rebuilt almost every one of our schools, largely on time and on budget. We've closed the achievement gap by about 50%. All 4 of our high schools are in the top 2% nationwide. People like Arnie Duncan and companies like Boeing moved to Arlington for our good schools. I've worked with 11 different school board members, hired 2 chief executives, those who voted on 15 budgets, the most recent almost $500 million. Arlington Public Schools employs more people than any other organization in the county except the federal government. We run a large transportation system, a large food service system. I've been chair 5 times. I know how to do this job. And we face tough issues on the school board. I'm proud of the progress we've made. We've come so far because we have clear goals and priorities, and we stick to them. We're transparent. We monitor how we are doing, and we report to our public. We keep looking ahead and work strategically. For example, because we pressed forward with getting Wakefield designed, we could take advantage of suddenly low construction costs, and that saved about $30 million. This way of working is exactly what we need in the next county board member to make sure that, as we grow and change, our core services, public safety, education, transportation, infrastructure, and a safety net for our most vulnerable remain strong. And Arlington remains the diverse and vibrant community we love. That's our goal, and that's why I'm running today.
Thank you so much for those great introductory remarks, and I really want to commend everybody for remaining a long time. And everybody. Now we get to the Wolf Blitzer portion of the program. I'm excited to ask each of the candidates a series of 6 questions that have been submitted by members of the audience. I'm going to start by posing the first question to Ms. Bondi, and then we'll have a 1-minute response from her, and then Jerome, and down the line. What's the most important experience or asset you would bring to the county board?
Thank you. It's hard to pick just one experience. Certainly being a member of a civic association and working to try to get improvements in my community and seeing how much work and effort it can take to organize with my neighbors in order to achieve a goal is something that really has informed me both as a candidate and in the vision that I would bring to the county board. I've also seen how when working together, people with very different ideas and perspectives can work to achieve great things, and that's also been something that's really informed me. As a nonprofit employee for virtually my entire career, I also know what it means to be able to work for a cause that you believe in, to work for long hours, and to have to bring a lot of different resources to bear in order to achieve goals that you have. And certainly all of those things inform me as a candidate. Thank you.
Mr. Sims?
Okay, so the question, Tom, or whoever actually asked the question. I would say just shortly that I've held leadership positions for the majority, actually all of my adult life. A lot of my friends, I'm involved in a lot of national security work, so my friends are always joke that, well, Tyrone, if you could bring people and communities together and move forward with community improvement projects in Iraq, you can probably do them pretty well in Arlington too. I would hope so. Hopefully we can find out. But also my system engineering degree and background gives me the ability to see how processes work in a very efficient manner, streamlining processes, always ensuring that cost-benefit analysis is done for projects. And so that's those two experiences, the leadership aspect and the systems aspect, I think is what I would bring most as a county board member. Thank you.
Thank you. My assets are my perspective and my approach. And this is a perspective that comes from being directly in the community, not only in civic associations, but also as a volunteer first responder, also as a Kiwanian, also my business perspective. In my day job, I help physicians use computer systems and exchange information securely so that we can improve patient care and reduce costs. I manage over 6 teams from anywhere from about $27 million, and I know how to take something from strategy to execution. I also bring my political background and my background for all of us to be able to collaborate and to come together and to make sure that we are solving problems in an efficient and a cost-saving manner.
Scar?
Well, I've talked about my experience on the school board, and I bring a fresh perspective, actually, because we do things somewhat differently on the school board side, and we really have a culture of continuous improvement with goal setting, clear priorities, transparent processes, and a way of monitoring, making sure that we continue to improve. But I think most of all, actually, what I bring is a broad and deep network of personal relationships around the region, across the state, and actually at the federal level as well. For example, a number of years ago, I worked for several years with superintendents and board members around the state to improve K-12 education. We actually came to consensus, and that included Arlington County with the highest teacher salary and Bedford County with the lowest. And we came to a consensus about teacher salary, lobbied the state, and actually did quite a bit to improve K-12 funding. I also saw the need for better emergency preparedness, and I'm on the Council of Governments Emergency Preparedness Council. There I've worked across the region to help get an outdoor alert system that serves us today here in Arlington. The problems and challenges we're facing, transportation, affordable housing, they cut across state, regional, federal lines, and I think those deep personal relationships that I've got and the ability to work with people will really benefit Arlington quite a bit, and I look forward to putting it to work.
Thank you, Tom. I would say that, as I said really in my opening, it's my broad range of experience. As a planning commissioner, I have hands-on experience in transportation, housing, education, urban planning, zoning, long-range plans. Most of the initiatives, of the last 7+ years, I have personally been involved in. Some I've agreed with, some I haven't, and I always feel there's room for tweaking and improvement. And you have to look at that when you're on the county board. It's not just what one thing you're going to advocate for. You're governing for all, and it's balanced competing priorities. Clearly my reputation for being very fair, paying attention to the underdog, not just the familiar person in the room who you see all the time, who's very good at getting their points across, but the people who are a little new to the process, the newcomers or whatever their situation may be. And again, finding the balance. And again, a reputation for independent thinking and not simply saying, oh yeah, sure, okay, I'll go along with whatever you want to do. I'm a full voice, independent on day one.
Thank you. The next question, we'll start with Mr. Sims. What would you do to promote affordable housing for families in Arlington?
Well, this is an extremely important question, so I'm definitely appreciative of whoever asked the question. We're dealing with two different groups here when it comes to affordable housing. We're dealing with the population of low-income families who live in this county and help make it great like we all do. And then you have the middle class who, for reasons that are out of their control, property values and so forth, they're slowly getting squeezed out. And we all respect and love our community as it is, and we have to do what we can to ensure that those populations are still allowed and able to live in this county. So I would do what I can as a board member to ensure that housing is available for all those persons.
I would have to agree that Arlington is a wonderful place to live, and because of this, sometimes we are a victim of our own success. We do need to focus and make affordable housing one of our main priorities moving forward. And this is not just only for families, but this is also for individuals. These are for people who make our community more vibrant. These are for people who are our home health workers, who are helping people age with dignity in place in their homes. We can do many things to do this. Our county is currently using many tools at their disposal, whether it be bonus density, whether it be AHIF, and the list goes on. But what we need to do in addition is not only build new construction that includes affordable units, but to get in front of current owners, to see where they are today, see if they're at risk, see if they're going to sell, and see if we can keep and retain those affordable units. Again, there are many ways that we can address this. We can do better, and we will do better.
I think in many ways, as we face change, this is the issue for the community. Market forces are against it. Us, it's really tough. But if we're going to keep Arlington a diverse and vibrant community we love, we've got to have a good supply of affordable housing. And it's not just for those with low income levels, but those with median income levels. Many of us of my age, our children can't even afford to live here. And what kind of a community can't afford to have its children live with us? So we need to work on this. I think we have to first really approach it with planning. Are we going to really commit? Is it important enough that we're going to put the resources there we need to? Right now we're doing a lot, but we're not doing enough. So clearly we're going to have to do something different. We do need to stay ahead. We need to work with the existing housing stock folks and make sure that they have loans and benefits that can help them continue to provide affordable housing. We need to do the bonus density. But I think we also need probably to be thinking outside of the box. Because as I say, the results we're getting are not sufficient. And if we want to be the kind of community we want in 20 years, we're going to have to do some things differently.
Mr. Fallon? Thank you. I think first of all it's worth saying that if it were easy to solve the problems with affordable housing, we'd already be doing it, wouldn't we? We wouldn't be having this struggle for years. So if nothing else, that makes it clear, as we already probably mostly knew, that it is a challenge. I think that first of all, people have talked about the incentives, the affordable housing bonus, for example, and other features that we have. We certainly need to revisit that and see, within the zoning ordinance, how you're limited in Virginia what you can do, okay, under the Dillon rule and what have you. We have limited tools. One in which we do have some control over, obviously, is incentivizing. But density is not always the answer, and I can tell you, having looked at more than 50 projects, okay, of one type or another in the last 7 years through site plan, everybody gets concerned about height and density. I would also suggest that we need to reconvene the housing roundtable from several years ago and look to change the housing ordinance in a negotiated manner amongst all the groups to have a more impactful change and benefit both sides. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Affordable housing is one of my very top priorities, as it has been since I began work on it in 2004. In that time, I have helped to create some of the portfolio of both programs, policies, and resources that we use in affordable housing, from building partnerships, both with nonprofit providers and for-profit providers, in order to preserve and to create new affordable housing, to our affordable housing ordinance, which is the strongest in the state that guarantees what has turned out to be more than $25 million worth of affordable housing benefits since it was enacted in 2006. Looking forward, we do need more tools. And in addition to the work that's being done along the Columbia Pike corridor to look at new innovative tools, I have worked at the national level with Smart Growth America, at the state and regional level with the Coalition for Smarter Growth, and as an advocate with the Virginia Housing Coalition and Housing Virginia in order to get more state resources like a statewide housing trust fund to help match what we do locally, as well as to get more protections in zoning.
The next question will start with Ms. Klingler.
I get the easy one, right?
The non-controversial
Not
side.
a controversial one. I do believe that there is value in looking ahead to future transportation methods. We cannot continue to do business the way we currently are. We have bottlenecks, we have pollution, we have too many cars on the road. With that being said, I've seen the connection between light rail and hard rail and other depots such as bus depots and car depots work well in other cities and in other countries. And that is the plan we need. It needs to be a master plan. With the current plans to date, I am not seeing that master plan. The question is whether or not we do or do not need a streetcar. It's whether or not we have the right plan in place and we have the money to afford a streetcar. Currently, we have capital maintenance backlog for just parks and facilities of $50 million. We need to take care of what we currently have. That may or may not mean bringing a streetcar in, but we need to make sure it's at the right time, for the right reason, with the right plan.
Well, we certainly need good transit in the Columbia Pike corridors we do elsewhere. The more we can get people out of their private cars and get into public transit, the better off we're going to be, and so will the planet. There has just been a big increase in the cost of that project, and I think one of the things we really need to do is take another look at it and review the cost-benefit analysis, because although we need transit, exactly what kind of transit, I'm not sure. Any question that you approach, you really have to look at what benefit, for whom, at what cost. Can we afford it? I'm not sure at this point. I do know that there's a lot of concern in the community, and anytime you can do a project of this size and scope, both with the cost and then think of the disruption that's going to happen along Columbia Pike as we build that streetcar, we need to make sure the community agrees that this is a good thing to do. So I think no matter what we decide, we have to make sure that we work with the community. I'd expect everybody to agree, but we need to make sure people are on board, because these are the folks we serve and the folks that are going to pay for it. So I think we need a lot more community engagement and a good cost-benefit analysis before we can really truly answer that question.
We need to expand our transit network in multiple corridors throughout the county. I certainly support that as a former member of the Transportation Commission and as a member of the Planning Commission. It has a business development, economic impact, and it's fair in that it also helps people who don't have cars, for example, people of lower economic means, for example, to get around and to participate in our community. At the same time, we need to maximize the return that we get on our investment. There's been a lot of talk about putting a streetcar with rails down at Columbia Pike. I haven't seen the analysis to support that the ridership is there now or in the future under the form-based code. Okay? And I've also heard that we'll still have buses running there because ultimately the streetcar stays on the rails. What I'm not convinced of, basically, is the mode. Other cities use what they call trolley buses or hybrid electric vehicles, for example, that can go off of the pike in this case and along other roads so that you don't have to make transfers and what have you. We need to look at what these other technologies are and get the best value, and not necessarily assume that anything less than a streetcar is not world class. Arlington is world class. Whatever we do will be.
I support the Columbia Pike streetcar because it is really good for the environment, and it's really good at moving many more people to their destinations, and it will do so more affordably once it is in place. Arlington has a long history and tradition of investing significantly in transit infrastructure and being rewarded for it. We've seen it in Metro, we've seen it in other projects we've done. And there's no reason to believe that this won't be equally successful for residents of South Arlington. It's often called the Columbia Pike streetcar, but this is actually part of a regional vision. The streetcar would connect residents from Fairfax and Skyline through Columbia Pike and down into Crystal City, Potomac Yard, and Alexandria. It's another one of our innovative, long-term thinking, regional vision for transportation and transit, and I support it.
At this time, I can't necessarily say whether I am for or against the Columbia Pike streetcar. But I do have to say that it disturbs me that over the past 18 months, the estimated costs have ballooned to $262 million, which is about $52 million per mile. I believe in the vision of the streetcar, but until we see a cost-benefit analysis to determine if this is the right route or how we're going to move forward with the project, I cannot make an actual stance on whether or not the trolley as designed and as projected with cost is a good thing for the county.
The next question, we'll start with Ms. Garvey. What's your view on the relations between the county board and the school board?
I have no clue.
What works and what could be improved?
Well, first, I think you've got good board members on both sides, and this is a wonderful community. I think you also have people who are committed to doing what's right for the community, which is great. I think the relationship in general is really quite good. If you compare what's going on in other jurisdictions, there are tensions, and that's understandable. I think we could be doing a better job of working together, particularly actually on planning for development. And we're starting to move in that direction, which is great. For example, the Crystal City Sector Plan is quite a major plan. It goes forward 40 years, but there's no mention of schools in it at all. And I think that's a mistake. And I think if we could start to work more closely together, and I think we are, as I say, doing that, and I think we can continue to do that. I think there is understanding and respect on both sides, which is important and crucial to any relationship. I think there's a fair amount of trust. That's important. And I think we can move forward. I think the more knowledge we have on both sides of what's going on with each board would help. I know sometimes on the school board, I wish I knew more about the county side, and we find things out, but I think there are better ways of doing that, and I think the flip is true too. So I am really looking forward to trying to be a bridge and just strengthening some already very good relations.
I think that the relationship between the school board and the county board is cordial, at times encouraging, and to borrow from Ms. Garvey, it certainly has its tensions. It has been my experience, and I've served on school-related things as well, that the school system's general approach has been just give us our money and leave us alone, right? Which I can understand, because from their standpoint, my observation is the system probably is a little quicker to make decisions and move forward on projects when it's time to build something. But maybe perhaps not so much in terms of community engagement, which is probably more the county's strength in that situation. So you sort of have these two conflicts that are very hard to reconcile. And yet a relationship where both want to be completely independent of one another. I think that in reality, they have to work much more together because it's all one Arlington. Ultimately, the county board controls, and this is why schools are important on the county board, we control the county side, the bonding and the annual allocation and what have you. And it is, as Ms. Garvey pointed out, the largest employer in the county.
Well, the county board and the school board share a really important goal, which is making sure that Arlington's children have the resources they need in order to excel. And we are fortunate that we have such outstanding public schools. And I believe that is partly the responsibility and the reward from the county board and school board working together. As a county board member, I would respect the role of the school board in stewarding our schools and setting policy for education. I would want to be a collaborative partner, helping to make sure that we have the adequate resources we need, both to meet our growing capacity needs and also on the operating side, making sure that we can attract and retain outstanding teachers and provide all of the other classroom benefits our children will need. As a county board member, I would want to be collaborative, I'd want to be communicative, and I'd want to make sure that the decisions that are being made where the county board has input on budget, on capital, and if community facilities are needed to help to address capacity, really reflect a full public process and conversations with our community about what our priorities should be.
Well, I've been active in the schools for numerous years and in many schools, as many of you know. The education holds a special place in my heart. But when it comes to the functions of the school board and the county board, I see some areas where we can make improvements with respect to maximizing effectiveness of our tax dollars. I look at procurement, for instance. If you take a look at IT, you know, both the public schools and the county government have separate contracts for everything, whether it's laying fiber optics, computer servers, web designer, all those things. And so I look at that at the top level, and I see a place where if the procurement officers at least come together and bid together, then we would get more effective use of our dollars. And so definitely that's one area I would look. I would also look in areas where the two have similar functions in their departments, like finance, and see where we can merge those operations.
I have been a school volunteer in the classroom, assisting with larger class size, as well as a county volunteer. I've also sat on the Capital Improvement Planning Work Group. And as a member of this work group, one of the recommendations that we made was, as we move forward with how we are going to prioritize our capital needs for the next 10 years, why aren't the schools at the table? Why are we not coming together on this very fundamental issue? So what did I do? I went to the school board meeting. And they also have a prioritization process to determine their capital improvement planning needs. And both processes from the county side and the school side are very valid. But to earlier folks' point, we can have them be integrated. So therefore, we can have cost savings in the long run. As we are making enhancements to Greenbrier Park, we can also be using some of those services to make enhancements to Yorktown High School. Same thing at TJ, the list goes on. We do need to make sure that we are being more collaborative and we are using our school facilities and our county facilities for multi-purpose reasons.
Thank you all. We are nearing the home stretch. I want to commend the candidates for their discipline on time. Let's finish strong here. Next question is for Mr. Fallon. What would you allow developers to do with pipestem lots?
Well, it's interesting. I've been around long enough to know that supposedly this issue was dealt with a number of years ago, and lo and behold, it wasn't. And I'm seeing some smiles in the back row from people who dealt with it at that time. It's a recent issue that's reared its ugly head, and for those of you who don't know, a good example of a pipe stem is like if you've got a certain shaped lot, for example, and you basically, sell your backyard and a house goes in there, okay? It doesn't look good, and there are protections in place to prevent it. But if you have a previously recorded lot and other little things and da-da-da-da-da, and the moon is in the 7th house and whatever, guess what? You get to do it, okay? Because ultimately the county says, oh goodness, we can't, wash your hands or whatever. So as to what more we can do, I guess ultimately we've dealt with the issue. We just have to, infill is a separate point, but as far as pipe stem, we have to cross our fingers that people don't come forward and try to develop their backyards or their lots in previously recorded situations. And in some cases, because we were talking about it, they ran out and they did it. Happened with lot coverage as well. So, our land is valuable.
Well, all right. This is the original lot, and this is the pipe stem. It is true that within the last 10 years, we've done a lot of work on single-family home zoning, and that's really what we're talking about here. We've looked at height, we've looked at lot coverage, the amount of space that a house can take up on a lot, and also pipe stem, which has been already described. What I believe, fundamentally, with any question regarding single-family home development, is that we know in Virginia that we have strong property rights, but we also have the opportunity as a county to trigger coming in for public review if you want to do something on your lot. Nothing should take away the inherent right of someone to develop, but certainly adding another house on a pipe stem is a doubling of density, and that should be something that the government can regulate. We can look at what setbacks are, we can look at size for houses, and I think we should be able to talk directly with the homeowner or the property owner to say, if there's something that you want to be able to do, will it fit? And if so, then let's find a way to make it work.
I have a feeling we're all going to say about the same thing on this answer, but I think when it comes to pipe stem lots, obviously everyone has the right to property, but I think when it comes to the size of the home and maybe the shape, depending upon the way it's laid out on that property, the community should have some say as to at least to the dimensions of the design.
This is, as a homeowner, also as a dear friend who is going through this process right now, I'm very sensitive to this. My friend who is having this process, the developer did go around the neighborhood and pretty much tell everyone that this was happening, and they made them aware of the situation. But what did not happen is making them aware of when the various hearings were going to occur. This is very sensitive. As homeowners in Arlington County, we want our property value to stay high, and we also want to gain property value. But we also want to make sure that appropriate processes are in place so that anyone who is a homeowner or potentially buying a house knows that this is occurring. And as a county board member, I would make sure that we had additional requirements in place to just make sure developers have reached out to those in the surrounding area. That is definitely a necessity.
Well, I'll take a little different tact on the answer to this one. I've heard about this issue of pipe stems, and I heard someone telling me, can you believe how long they talked about that? You know, it gets a little bit to the work of what should be the work of the board, and I think we could be working a little more efficiently. The work of the board is to set standards and priorities and policies, and then hire staff to implement those, and then to make sure that we have monitoring procedures to make sure that the implementation is going as it should be. And then you get into sort of this culture of continuous improvement. And board members should be working on policies and procedures and monitoring to see that where we're headed is where we want to be headed and we reflect the values of the community. But the real details of pipe stems, sidewalk lengths, tables on sidewalk cafes, really ought to be much more at a staff level. And I really don't think the county board should be spending a whole lot of time talking about it. And if it's not working right now, then we need to figure out what are the policies, the procedures that need to be fixed so that it does start working well. Is it staff that needs to be changed? I'm not sure. More resources? That's the way we need to be working. And I think as we face really big challenges, we need to make sure we're keeping our eye on the big challenges and not get too caught up in a lot of details, which is easy for board members to do. And I did just go over a little bit.
Our last question goes first to responding. What is the biggest challenge that the county faces, and how would you seek to meet that challenge on the county board?
I do believe that the biggest challenge facing Arlington is the challenge of affordable housing. Affordable housing makes, access to affordable housing helps children to be able to better be prepared to learn in school. It helps make it easier for us to attract and retain a great workforce and a diverse workforce. It makes it easier for people to raise a family. It makes it easier for seniors to stay in our community. It contributes to our economy and to our emergency preparedness. So I believe it is our greatest challenge. As a county board member, I would continue to do what I have done as an advocate, a commissioner, as a professional at the federal, state, and local levels on affordable housing. I would promote best practices, which Arlington has done, in part because of advocacy from many advocates, some of whom are in this room. I would work to expand our tools. I would expand financing and funding for affordable housing. I would make sure that we did more on first-time home ownership so that young people can both afford to stay here and also to raise their families.
There are a lot of challenges that are facing our county. Honestly, I would say transportation is the biggest one. That's more of a regional issue. But internally within the county, even though I believe the school board is going to be wrestling with this one, and has been for the past 6 years or so, our school overcrowding, elementary, middle school in the northern part of the county, I see is our biggest issue. Our schools are estimated to have 35 additional students, and there's no real foreseeable plan to be executed. Where does that come on the county board side? Well, obviously, if we decide to either build new schools, if there's room, or if we have to renovate schools to make them bigger, then we'd have to issue a bond. And with how people are feeling about putting bonds on the ballot, if we have to go in that direction, it may get a little contentious.
I actually want to talk about 3 things, but I'll limit it to 1. What I'm hearing on the doors is a significant concern about density, and this really boils down to smarter growth. People realize in Arlington that we are going to grow bigger, that we are a bit of an urban village, but at the same time, they want to keep their identity, to keep their neighborhoods. As we create our sector plans, Crystal City, East Falls Church, R&D Corridor, the list goes on, they want to make sure that we are protecting our neighborhoods and that we are protecting people and pedestrian and bicyclist safety within these neighborhoods. It does boil down to density, but it also boils down to making sure that our roads and our public services also support that density.
I think our biggest challenge, actually, as I spoke on in my opening remarks, is managing change. And we are in a time of unprecedented change. This is really a pivotal era and time for Arlington. And I think the only way we really can do that is to start doing some really good overall strategic planning, because we've got a lot of exciting things. We've got streetcars, we've got aquatic centers that we think we want to do and I think would be great. We also have our infrastructure that is not doing very well. I think the maintenance study that led by Mary Hines that the county board did recently is excellent, a good first start to making sure that we're taking care of business first. So overall, when it comes to managing change, we need to know what our priorities are, and I don't think we're clear about that right now. And I will say, for me, our first priority needs to be our core services. We need to make sure that we have our good infrastructure, we're maintaining what we have, public safety. I think, as I mentioned at ACDC, our police force has not seen an increase in 10 years, and we've grown quite a bit. Education, a safety net for our most vulnerable. We cannot approach all of these complex problems without some real strategic planning and some difficult conversations in the community, because we can't afford to do it all. I'm sorry, I didn't hold it.
The biggest challenge? Well, I think that first of all depends on your point of view and what personally interests you. Now, why am I saying that? Because in reality, it varies from person to person. But I think that as a county board member, your biggest challenge is whatever the constituent, standing or sitting in front of you, tells you it is. All right? In other words, it's not just one thing, and you just can't be a one-trick pony. Okay? Now, my view personally is that, again, and you'll hear some of these sentiments here because everybody touched on it to one degree or another, is that managing change for the next generation, it really gets to what I call my vision of community sustainability and overall livability. Okay? That includes everything from economic development, infrastructure decisions, dealing with, from the county side, with the school overcrowding. But really, if we want to be the caring community that we talk about in our vision statement in the Arlington, then we have to think about how all of that affects people. It's not just about dollars and cents. And we want the affordable housing. We want to retain the middle class. We don't want Arlington to merely be a temporary point on your life journey, but someplace that you can spend your life once you get here. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the question portion of the forum. With that, we will go to closing remarks. Again, I would remind the audience that you all have done a superb job as well. Please hold your applause until the end. We are going to give closing remarks in the same order in which we give opening statements.
Thank you, Tom. Since I made my campaign announcement before ACDC in December, I've been knocking on doors, visiting different groups, and going to events and trying to hear from people all over Arlington. The reaction has been very favorable and heartwarming, and frankly humbling as well. People comment on my knowledge and insight and my candor, okay, which they have not always found in other politicians and in other candidates. In fact, I'm generally told, you don't already seem like a politician. And I said, well, thanks, that's a compliment, I hope. And they say, yeah, it is. Okay? I'm more of a community advocate, and this is the next stage of what I'm looking to be. People welcome that I don't back away from challenge or ignore problems, that I accept responsibility, think independently, and I'm willing to push the envelope to get results. As a member of the county board, I would be voting on the very policy matters that I am currently working on as a planning commissioner. And I would remind you all that this path from planning commission to county board has a long-standing history and tradition in Arlington. Most recently, both Barbara Favola and Chris Zimmerman came from the planning commission and then elected into long-term and wonderful service on our county board. And to quote a senior member of the Arlington County Democratic Committee, who is not here tonight, I can think of no better training ground to prepare for the county board than service on the planning commission. I can be effective on day one. I would be a full fifth vote and find common ground with my new colleagues to reach an effective outcome. I have worked the issues facing our high-density metro corridors and the issues facing our established neighborhoods. As the parent of a preschooler,